Good evening, this is an English edition of Dalsan TV. My name is Abdelrazak Ali and thank you so much for tuning into Dalsan TV. Let's have a look at some of the stories that are making headlines here in Somalia. President Mohamud meets with religious scholars to discuss anti-Al-Shabaab. Somali army kills 27 Al-Shabaab militants in Lower Juba region. Somali parliament votes to approve the admission of Somalia into East African Community. Kenya Airways adds direct Somalia-UAE cargo flights. Welcome back. Somali President Dr. Hassan Sheikh Mohamud has held a meeting with a group of Somali religious scholars at the presidential palace in Mogadishu on Friday to discuss the ongoing war against the Al-Shabaab militant group with the scholars. Our reporter has more on this. Somali President Dr. Hassan Sheikh Mohamud has met with a group of Somali religious scholars at the presidential palace in Mogadishu to discuss the ongoing war against Al-Shabaab. President Mohamud praised the sheikhs for their support of the government in its fight against the group, whom he described as enemies of Islam and Somalia. He emphasized that the scholars are the inheritors of Somalia's noble religious tradition. He urged the scholars to utilize their knowledge and influence to counter the extremist ideology of Al-Shabaab, which he characterized as rooted in ignorance and violence. In response to the scholars expressed solidarity with the president and the government in their efforts to defeat Al-Shabaab and rebuild the country, they condemned the atrocities committed by the Al-Shabaab, stating that actions are contrary to the teachings of Islamic and the values of the Somali people. They call on the Somali populace to unite and collaborate with the government and security forces in the fight against terrorism. In January 2023, a conference of Somali scholars was convened in Mogadishu with the aim of delegitimizing the influence of Al-Shabaab. Prominent scholars and religious leaders from Somalia and abroad discussed strategies for combating the extremist ideology of Al-Shabaab using theological arguments. Somalia's federal government has conducted a military offensive against Al-Shabaab, reclaiming most population centers in Hirshabelle and Galmudug states over the past 2 years. However, Al-Shabaab has responded with numerous attacks on military and civilian targets in Mogadishu and some recently lost territories. Now, Kenya Airways has started ferrying cargo directly between Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates UAE and Somalia's capital Mogadishu as it seeks to expand its cargo business.
Kenya Airways, or KQ, has started ferrying cargo directly between Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates and Somalia's capital Mogadishu as it seeks to expand its cargo business. The airline has launched a weekly flight effective Friday, February 9th, with plans to increase to twice a week in April. The national carrier has partnered with Dubai-based sales agent Global GSA Cargo as its logistics partner to service the route. Kenya Airways expanded its cargo freight fleet with a B737-800F plane last November, with plans to lease a second similar aircraft. The planes have a higher cargo capacity and operate long-range flights compared to KQ's two B737-300Fs. The 737-800F plane carries up to 23 tons of revenue payload, according to the manufacturer Boeing. In 2020, KQ converted two of its B787s into cargo airlines, following high demand for freight services amid a sharp decline in passenger services at the height of the coronavirus pandemic. In addition to Sharjah, the third most populous city after Dubai and Abu Dhabi, the airplane plans to deploy its cargo planes on destinations such as Dubai, Jeddah, Riyadh, Dakar, Lagos, Mumbai, Freetown, and Monrovia. Kanan Nachiapan, the CEO of Global GSA Cargo, said the direct UAE-Somalia flights would cut transit times and reduce costs. Kenya Airways said it would also be resuming direct passenger flights between Nairobi and Mogadishu starting February 15th, 2024.
Now moving on to our next story, Somalia's National Army has killed at least 27 Al-Shabaab militants in Lower Juba region. According to the Somali National Army, the militants were killed after a planned operation carried out in Lower Juba region on Saturday morning. Our reporter has more on this. The Somali National Army has on Saturday carried out a massive operation aimed at flushing out Al-Shabaab militants from their hideouts in Lower Juba region, west of Kismayo town. The successful operation, which was conducted by the Danab elite commandos of the Somali military, led to the killing of 27 Al-Shabaab insurgents. The offensive operation also left 36 other members of the terror group with severe injuries in Yak Dabeil village. In December last year, Somali National Army and regional Jubaland state forces killed more than 70 Al-Shabaab militants after conducting operation at Abodin area in Lower Juba region in southern Somalia. The latest onslaught is part of ongoing efforts by the Somali government to eliminate Al-Shabaab from the Horn of African nation, where they have wreaked havoc for decades. Lower Juba region is among the areas substantially controlled by the Islamist insurgents group, and government of both state and federal announced plans to dismantle the terror group from the area. The lower house parliament of Somalia has on Saturday approved and ratified the Treaty of Accession. The lower house of the federal government of Somalia on Saturday approved and ratified the Treaty of Accession to the East African Community that was signed between Somalia and the regional bloc on 15th December 2023.
Somalia's lower house of parliament approved the country's membership of East African Community (EAC) following Saturday's parliamentary session in Mogadishu. The parliament's endorsement of the agreement clears the path for completing Somalia's membership process within the regional bloc. Somalia officially joined the East African Community in November last year, aiming to stimulate economic growth after 3 decades of war. The Council of Ministers of EAC has been assigned the responsibility of submitting the approved agreement to initiate the implementation process, leading to the formal membership of the Federal Republic of Somalia. Somalia's integration into the EAC is a massive step for Horn of Africa nation, but it did not come easy. Months of lobbying to join the regional bloc were met by serious questions and hesitation by some member states. Earlier last year, EAC Secretary General Peter Mathuki hinted that Djibouti and Ethiopia will also join the bloc.
Israeli forces are now gearing up for a ground assault on Hamas in southern Gaza city of Rafah, where hundreds of thousands of people displaced by violence further north are trapped in desperate conditions.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Friday ordered the military to come up with a plan for the city of Rafah, both to evacuate civilians and defeat the last Hamas fighters there. More than half of Gaza's 2.3 million people are trapped there, after fleeing fighting in other parts of the enclave. It has also become the focus of Israel's military campaign in Gaza. Israeli forces have been moving southwards through Gaza in response to Hamas's October 7th rampage in Israel by fighters who killed 1,200 people and took 253 hostages, according to Israeli tallies. But Israel has faced pressure over a potential ground assault in Rafah, including from its main ally, the United States. On Thursday, President Joe Biden said Washington would not support a military operation in Rafah without due consideration for civilians.
The conduct of the response in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, has been over the top.
Israel says 4 Hamas battalions are in Rafah, and it cannot achieve its goal of eliminating the militant group by leaving them there. The Palestinian Authority, which exerts partial self-rule in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, accused Israel of trying to drive Palestinians from their land. Aid groups have sounded the alarm too, saying many Palestinians will die if forces storm Rafah, on top of the roughly 28,000 that Gazan authorities say have already died in the months-long conflict. An Israeli official told Reuters the idea would be to move people in Rafah northwards before any military operation. But the UN says people should not be forced to leave en masse.
I haven't seen them in a long time. Yeah, a few weeks.
Washington has been trying to get traction for a ceasefire this week.
אנחנו בדרך לניצחון מוחלט.
Netanyahu just rejected a proposal for one from Hamas. It called for a months-long ceasefire, freeing remaining hostages, and the withdrawal of Israeli troops. Netanyahu called it delusional and vowed to fight on.
Well, that story brings us to the end of this bulletin. Thank you so much for always tuning in to Dalsan TV. Have a lovely evening.